Okay, it's Roger once again, Mud Fossil University. If you're here, you obviously know that I study history and I have extreme differences in what we were told, and I have the evidence support my side of the differences. Now, having said that, I long ago studied Immanuel Velikovsky's accounts, Worlds in Collision, and all that, and I actually wrote a book called Minds in Collision. He's my hero, and I am going to present evidence that he presented. And then we're going to talk about it. And then we're going to go through the book of Enoch and all these things, because now everything's different. From what I discovered with the dragon and the fish and the universe is filled with body parts. All these things were true, apparently, that they wrote. So nobody has ever thought of it as 100% factual. And now I'm looking at it as literally 100% factual. And I am starting to think that the Gnostics were the guys that had the right thinking. In other words, they said it's all knowledge. That's really what you're here for, is knowledge. Your body is just here to support the accumulation of knowledge. All right? Your thoughts, your knowledge, your intelligence can never die. That's what they said. They said your body comes and goes. They just keep floating through these different phases of existence. But your intelligence never dies. That's what they say. That's what the Gnostics say. I kind of like that idea. Now, let's see what it has to say here in the Hebrew cosmology. This is Electric Universe Eyes. And I just popped on here for a second, but he sounds pretty good. And he's talking about my hero, Immanuel Velikovsky, so let's see what he's got to say.
Two topics: the Hebrew cosmogony and the planet ages. The Hebrew cosmogony. This world came into existence out of a chaos of fluid driven by a divine blast. This is the epic beginning of the book of Genesis. Quote,
all right, don't forget, he's talking about a fluid driven by a divine blast. Something set it off to spin. And something, as I continue to think this through, I have to feel that there's something in the center, which is the rub. That's the part that rubs. As it spins, that is the thing that it rubs against. All these particles spinning rub against. And they cause it to literally grow and heat and so forth. And originally it would be flat. It would literally be a flat plane. What I'm trying to do is find out about these books of these, which seem just insane. But when I saw the giant dragon with his throat cut in the desert, and it said God would cut his throat, the giant dragon that lives in the sea. What are you supposed to take away from that? So now I go back to the flat earth people, because they've been attacking me from day one. And I believe now, yes, the earth was flat at one time. It was a rotating disc. Shoo, 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 shoo. And the center had to have something in there to rub against all these particles that were scrubbing around it. And then it would get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then eventually it would pop into a ball. So, but at one time, yes, it could very well be flat. And I read that in the ancient Hebrew text, it said that at one time, the firmament, which is this, would be riding over the top of the earth, the scrubbing zone, was so close to the earth that the birds would fly right on its edge. Now, then I start to think to myself, the Tower of Babylon never made any sense to me either. But if the surface of the ionosphere was so close to the earth, maybe they could think they could build a tower up to there. Now, apparently the gods lived up on the top here somehow. There's so much to think about now. My mind is in chaos, really, literally. Nobody ever expected this. So don't think anything other than think. Just think. Just let your mind think. Because once you stop and oh yeah, even if when you just stop and think, oh yeah, that changes everything, and I'm all set because I know this one little thing now. No, it's everything. If everything changed, everything changed. So now you got to start from the beginning again. What does Genesis mean? I understand now that when they said there were giants in the earth in those days, that is literally in the earth. The earth was the giants, and after that, when the sons of God went into the daughters of men, that's when they had more giants. So it's just two different giant events. And the earth is giants. There was giants in the earth in those days. Now, then you get to the dragon and the fish. They are way up, sitting flat on top of the surface of the earth. They are the highest thing on the earth. So they're not buried with the millions and billions of years of this and that. And I'm telling you right now, I don't think the earth is hardly old at all. All right? When I'm seeing, I don't think it was very old at all. Although, you know, you have all of these body parts, but they're all over the top of the earth. I don't know what to think anymore. I really don't. We know that there's such enormous giants, like where Tyson's doing his research, that cover literally almost continents. It's just so huge. It's unbelievable. So, and then all we have mud fossils on top of those. So was the earth one big corpse? And it says in the Gospel of Thomas, when you discover the earth, you're going to find it was a body. And when you discover the earth, you're going to find it was a corpse. And it also says, when you discover these things, you are going to be disturbed. And then you are going to marvel. And that's every word of that is true. So let's start looking at what the texts were written in this whole new light with Velikovsky, because Velikovsky did a lot of work, and I always liked his research, and I always liked his way of doing it, which was to back everything up, different sources, corroborate one or the other, and then make sure that everything was true, because they wrote the same thing in China as they did in South America at the same years in different sort of ways. So they didn't just copy the book and bring it over there. All right, now let's go into a little bit of an exploration of what was written, and let's just stop and think, all right? Just sit down for a second, just shut it off for a second, and say to yourself, deal with yourself in your own mind if you're going to be able to accept this information. Because there's people that are attacking us all now. You know, I'm not going to go into it, but when you start to go into this depth of emotion, really, and there is a lot of emotion here, trust me, a lot. This is your eternity. And I mean, I'm serious now. This is not a joke anymore at all. This is not anything to brush over lightly. It's a marvel, exactly what Jesus said, and it's disturbing. All right, so let's prepare for both of those things. All right, I'm just going to let him keep going with this Hebrew cosmology. I can't wait to get into the Book of Enoch, because I remember reading that very long time ago and being so confused by his talking about sweeping over these hills and the winds coming this way and that way, and I finally just gave up, to be perfectly honest with you. But now, with a whole new perspective on this, the interaction of the ionosphere just off the surface could be totally new experience. Anyway, let's let this guy continue on Electric Universe Eyes, and we'll hear what he has to say, because Velikovsky is the guy that I'm going to push forward here with. He was the guy that really did the most research in the most true, honest way. So let's go.
The earth was chaotic and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and God's wind moved upon the face of the fluid. End quote. From this primeval matter, in a process of subsequent creations, was born the home of the living. Already before the birth of our earth, worlds were shaped and brought into existence, only to be destroyed in the course of time. Quote, "Nor is this world inhabited by man, the first of things earthly created by God. He made several worlds before ours, but he destroyed them all." End quote. The earth underwent reshaping, 6 consecutive remoldings. Heaven and earth were changed in every catastrophe. 6 times the earth was rebuilt, without entire extirpation of life on it, but with major catastrophes. 6 ages have passed into the great beyond. This is the 7th creation, the time in which we live. According to another tradition, several heavens were created, 7 in fact. Also 7 earths were created, the most removed being the 7th Erez, followed by the 6th Adama, the 5th Arka, the 4th Haraba, the 3rd Yabasha, the 2nd Tebel, and our own land called Heled. And like the others, it is separated from the foregoing by abyss, chaos, and waters. The description permits an interpretation that all the 7 earths exist simultaneously, but a deeper insight will allow us to recognize that the original idea did not admit 7 concurrent but separate firmaments and worlds in space. But
Right. Now, with the electron flood theory and the waters, which are the electrons, and they flood everywhere, so it's really a flood of waters of electrons. We can look at this anew. All right, so we're going to jump right back in. And don't forget, they're talking with 7 different creations. And the Gnostics say you're just here to accumulate knowledge. Now, and knowledge never dies. So apparently you take it with you when you go, and you leave your body for whatever purpose, to feed somebody else. Sheds a whole new light on things. Very, very strange. And I'm learning as you're learning, if you're learning. But I'm learning, I can tell you that. Okay, I jump back just a smidge. Here goes again.
Current but separate firmaments and worlds in space, but only consecutive in time, and built one out of another. Quote, "The 7 heavens form a unity, the 7 kinds of earth form a unity, and the heavens and the earth together also form a unity." End quote. The Hebrew cosmogony in its true sense is a conception of worlds built and reshaped with the purpose of bringing creation closer to perfection.
There it is, accumulation of knowledge. That's what it appears to me.
Separation of one world from another by abyss and chaos evidently refers to the cataclysms that separated the ages. Planet ages. The ages of the past, between the successive catastrophes, are called in many diverse sources, quote, sun ages. I have tried to show why this designation is meaningful, but the ancients also maintain that the successive ages were initiated by planets, Moon, Saturn, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, Mars. Therefore, the sun ages could also have been called planet ages. Hesiod ascribed the Golden Age to the time when the planet Saturn was ruling, and the Silver and Iron Ages to the time of the planet Jupiter. The same concept is found in Virgil, who says that, quote, "Before Jove's day, i.e. in the Golden Age when Saturn reigned, no tillers subdued the land, even to mark the field or divide it with bounds was unlawful." End quote. The idea that the earth was under the sway of different planets at different ages is also the teaching of the Pythagoreans, the Magi, Gnostic sects, and other secret societies. In numerous astrological texts, the same concept is repeated, that 7 millennia were dominated by 7 planets, one after the other. The worshippers of the devil, the Syrian sect of the Yazidis, believed that 7,000 years had passed since the deluge. At the end of every millennium, one of the 7 planet gods descended on the earth, establishes a new order and new laws, and then retreats to his place. An identical tradition is found in the writings of Julius Africanus. The ages of the ancestors passed under the government of the planets, each in its turn. Also, according to the Ethiopian text of the first book of Enoch, the 7 world ages were each dominated by one planet. The Gnostic sect of the Mandaeans taught in its holy book Sidra Rabbah that the history of mankind is composed of 7 epochs, that these epochs were terminated by catastrophes, and that one of the planets ruled in each epoch. The length of the ages in the Sidra Rabbah is made very long, but the concept is, nevertheless, common to many ancient creeds. This was written by Emmanuel Velikovsky, narrated by Electric Universe.
Amazing. Okay, I'm just diving around, seeing what they have to say about Emmanuel Velikovsky. Now, this guy is also including Samuel Butler, who was another, I believe, controversial figure. It's David Bell, and Worlds in Collision and the Road to Nowhere, Kiwi Connection, Practical Theology. Now, I don't know what it's about, but it's got Emmanuel Velikovsky in it, so we're going to see. Here goes.
Who basically is a 20th century figure, and Samuel Butler, who lives between both the 19th and a little bit into the 20th century. And both of them are highly controversial figures. Now, I want to start with Emmanuel Velikovsky, who was a Russian Jew, came from a well-off family and received very high levels of education, and by the 1920s had qualified in medicine and was practicing as a psychiatrist, and well and truly au fait with the works of Sigmund Freud. But he also had a lot of interest in what...
I want to also mention, I don't know if he's going to say it or not, but Velikovsky knew Einstein, and, you know, they bantered back and forth, and of course Einstein won because, well, anyway, I'm not going to bother going into that, but, and Velikovsky was destroyed. That's the bottom line, and Velikovsky was right.
We might call hardcore science, and he was one of the key figures that set up the University of Jerusalem. And Velikovsky is a very influential figure in some ways, and is almost a hated figure in other ways. And what happened was that he wrote a book in 1950 called Worlds in Collision. And in essence, Worlds in Collision is about the catastrophes that occur to planet Earth. We're used to thinking in terms of climate change as being the chief catastrophe. But Velikovsky belonged to that school of biologists who believed that there were massive interventions that forced evolution along its inevitable path. Things like comets hitting the Earth and so on and so forth. And he had a series of catastrophic interventions that, in essence, he derived, I think, from his Jewish understanding of the reading of the creation stories. Now, to show what his main idea was in terms of geological catastrophe, just think of the beautiful planets. We're used to the images that come from NASA, and here's the solar system, beginning with Mercury and going all the way out to Pluto. I don't know what the current state of the debate on whether Pluto is still regarded as a planet or not a planet, but anyway, that's the solar system as Velikovsky understood it. And what he proposed was really extremely interesting. He believed that Venus was originally a moon of Jupiter.
That's not true. He believed that, just as the text stated, that Venus was a fiery comet born from the feared god Jupiter. That was the inscription. A fiery comet, because anything that's traced through the solar system, they call comets. And it was literally born from Jupiter. Now, Venus is almost the exact same spot as the great red spot, the giant red spot on Venus. I mean, on Jupiter. So, They said it was born. Now, why would it come out so hot if it was a moon and it just walked away? It was so bright, it was as bright as the sun. So, anyway, I think that was wrong what he said, I believe.
So there's Jupiter, the gaseous giant in the middle, what we call Venus orbiting round, and he said, okay, something occurred around about 3,500 BC, and Venus flew out of...
That's also not correct. It's 1500 BC. It's 3,500 years ago.
Of its orbit, and that caused geological catastrophe back on Earth. Catastrophic planetary intervention caused massive cultural changes on planet Earth. And he proposed this book, this thesis, in the 1950s.
Now, I don't know if he's going to ever say this, but Velikovsky didn't just guess this. He took all of these, every single statement he made was based on some historical document, carving, etching, tomb inscription. It was not just made up, and they were from all over the world. So I've made this point over and over and over, but you have to understand, Velikovsky was a true researcher. He actually touched the documents, and he was a Jewish scholar. He was skilled in every. He was broad. He understood. I do the same thing. I do everything, and he's the same way. And he said I didn't want to have to do all this stuff, but he had to prove himself. And I'm the same way. I'll do whatever I have to do to prove myself, and I have to do everything. So there it goes.
And there was an immediate kind of outcry about the publication of the book, and the reason was that he proposed that Macmillan, who were a highly respected academic press, publish the work, and various people had got wind of Velikovsky's ideas, and they objected so strongly that Macmillan actually withdrew publication of the book, which had already sort of escaped out as a kind of a popular science book. And
it was on the bestseller list, the top of the bestseller list, 12 weeks in a row, and they pulled it because they were threatened by academics that they would never buy another book from them.
They moved it over, I can't remember, it may have gone to Doubleday to do the publishing, in other words, to a non-academic press. And the American Association for the Advancement of Science and people like the astronomer Shapley and Carl Sagan, they conducted the equivalent of a trial that would have made, a heresy trial that would have made Galileo blanch. And so you've got this highly influential Jewish psychiatrist who extended the reach of his science into the fields of geology and astronomy, and came up, I think, with a not unreasonable reading of catastrophic events as being the main cause of evolutionary change on Earth, and sort of micromanage that into the biblical pattern of disasters. Well, the scientific establishment turned...
Now don't forget, again, he didn't just use the biblical texts. He went to India, he went to China, he went to South America, every culture. And he names them right off because he did it. And I studied this guy very well. I didn't understand at that time because I didn't know what I know now. And some of the stuff I thought was just insane, but everything is insane that I figured, I discovered, so it just falls right in line.
Velikovsky into the archetypal anti-science. Well, I suppose, in popular opinion, he was a kind of folk hero because his works took off. Particularly the Reader's Digest, which was slanted towards a sort of a creationist stance, really went to town with Velikovsky, but lots of other popular science reviewers thought it was a great work. So there was this figure who became hated, in a sense, by the scientific establishment, and at the same time was instrumental in setting up the University of Jerusalem. And it would not be true to say that all the scientific establishment hated him. There's a long and voluminous correspondence, I think, with Einstein that was only published decades after Velikovsky died.
Yeah, he corresponded with him. Einstein was apparently a nice guy, but he was wrong about everything and never admitted it until he was on his deathbed, really.
So, we've got Worlds in Collision. He also wrote another popular book that put him on the outer, and very much on the outer. And the scientific press would not give Velikovsky a forum during the rest of his life to further explain his ideas. It had to remain...
Exactly. They will not let you speak. They won't let you speak. Well, that is just not right. That is just not right. Nobody can justify that to me. That if you come forward with evidence like I have, in every realm that I have my evidence, and I am not allowed to speak, just like Velikovsky wasn't allowed to speak. Now, he had theories that were supported by what they were seeing, but, you know, there could be other interpretations of what they were seeing, yes. And so I'm not going to say that they were just terrible for not looking into what he did. They were bad. They should have looked into it. They might have come up with some other conclusion, and I think is what they did, is come up with some other conclusion. Now, my stuff, they refuse to look into it because they cannot come up with any other conclusion, and they know that. So now they are just literally deniers of reality, which is 100% against their stated mission in life, is to investigate and learn and study and be interested. And as far as I can see, academia, NASA, every one of them has failed in that. Now, I don't want to be nasty. I'm not trying to be nasty, but you can't be nice anyway. Being nice, you just sit in the woods being nice. So I'm going to just keep pushing this until somebody speaks up for reality and truth. It really is. It's a really serious issue. Truth is not accepted. That's the problem. Here it goes.
In the realm of popular, maybe not all that academic kind of science. So, having said that, I'm just wondering...
See, my stuff is academic.
You would like to make at
my
this
stuff
point,
is 100% scientific.
About Velikovsky, Peter Lane, or anything come up on the chat pod?
I think it's interesting that Velikovsky's basic thesis is being picked up by a whole variety of science fiction writers.
Yeah, I could be wrong, but I suspect that Velikovsky is so steeped in Jewish tradition that he needed to read out of the early biblical books, you know, a kind of scientific understanding of what happened. And in that sense, I don't know that he's so different from Einstein, but Einstein's God wouldn't intervene, you know, like in the book of Exodus or with any of the miracle stories, whereas I have the feeling that Velikovsky's God, though it operates through catastrophe, there's still some kind of guiding hand there. But for Einstein, the idea of miraculous intervention, like you'd find in Exodus, is just not feasible.
It's just nonsense to those people. Now, plus a dragon and a fish in the desert, 1,000 miles long, would be nonsense too. All of that stuff was. So now we have to start over. And I mean, we have to start over. We have to look over. We have to see with new eyes and not turn away. It's been 8 years of hiding. It's sooner or later, somebody's got to step up. It's just insanity. Literally insanity. NASA's going to Mars acting like they have no clue whatsoever what's there, and I've shown it to them over and over and over. All the universities are just pretending that they're looking for stuff. They're not really looking because I've shown them over and over and over. So what is going on? What the hell is going on with society and with humanity anymore? When truth is so avoided and denied, it's unbelievable. I'm going to probably maybe just leave it at this or throw in another one, but if not, I love you all. I just want truth. I just want honesty. Velikovsky was reading the texts that were written. He didn't make these things up. This guy's saying, oh, well, he was a Jewish guy and he wanted to make sure that his Jewish stuff came through Jewish. Well, no. He was reading about the parting of the seas. He was reading about the pharaohs doing this. He was reading about the Jews being exiled and getting out of their captivity in approximately the same years that these catastrophes happened. Velikovsky's interpretation of this eruption of Venus from Jupiter, and then the catastrophes that follow in that 1500 BC time frame, is when the Jews got out of captivity from the Pharaoh. And apparently, whether God intervened and sent down like the manna and did all these things and created all these plagues, I have no idea. None whatsoever. But they were written in these texts and documents and carved on the stele and on the monuments and the tombs and everything else. The dates, what they did, what happened, what transpired, what God was at fault, and all of this stuff. So Velikovsky wasn't making anything up. He wasn't skewing things towards his Jewishism. None of that stuff. He was, and I mean, I followed him as good as anybody, well, as good as I could. So I think he had it right, but at the time, I didn't understand about the fish and the dragon and all of these unbelievable things. So the things that, like the Book of Enoch and stuff that he was talking about, and the giants and all these things that were also written, I sort of was like, oh boy, that's kind of crazy. But now I'm saying, well, everything's crazy, so let me look at it. I'm even looking at the Tower of Babel, why they built the Tower of Babel, because the atmosphere would have been so low to the earth on a spinning disc that they said actually the birds would fly in and would almost hit the firmament, they called it, right, which would be the ionosphere, and it would be really low to the surface because you're just spinning, you're just starting to build up, and then eventually it would add more and more and more, and it would keep getting further and further away, and then eventually there would be so much crushing in that it would pop into a ball. And that's exactly what happened. It started out flat as an accretion disk, and eventually the firmament layer got further and further out, which is our magnetosphere, our ionosphere. And at that point, they're crushing more and more in because it's spinning against these particles over and over and over, and they crush and crush and crush, and pow, it pops into a ball. And not only that, at that point it would be extremely cold and you'd have your ice ages. And that, well, your ice age. And that ice age is just now getting over, and we are overheated now. I think the Earth spinning through all these particles cannot just go through different ice ages. They're going to throw off an ice age here and they're going to warm up and get a cold again and all this. No. It was cold, it's going to get overheated and burn up, and that's exactly what Enoch said. And they said that 7 Earths came and passed away, and this one will pass away from fire. That's what they said. No, here it is right here, Harvard Origins of Life Initiative. I've sent them this stuff over and over, and they're just not interesting. Here they are. I see people at Harvard. Now, apparently I don't show up here. I could see I posted, but where it is, I have no idea. Now, why would they not be interested in DNA-certified giant human beings? What would keep them from wanting to see anything about that or ask any questions about that, if that is Origins of Life Initiative. You know, I posted here. I can post again. It won't matter. Nobody ever responds ever. So that's what Velikovsky was up against. That's what this other guy was up against. That's what I'm up against. And that's what you're up against, my friend. They do not want truth. Right, let's just contact us. I probably did this a million times. Well, I know I have, so it doesn't matter. I can do it again, and I will. So that's the way life is in the ignoring reality realm. Alright, so we know we're going to have to review Origin of the Species. And, you know, the whole thing appears to have merit now, or at least deserves reconsideration.
Help from a shepherd. He bought some books in for his spiritual sustenance, if you like, his intellectual sustenance. He even had a, pardon me, a little harmonium brought in so he could play music. He was not a gifted composer, but he was a composer of sorts. He just had the artist's eye for everything. He is a very skilled photographer. And in fact, some of Butler's photographs, when he eventually went back to England, having made his fame and fortune here, he went on tours of Italy, and some of his photographs are absolutely superb. He had some of his paintings hanging in the Royal Academy. So though his father had hated the idea of him being an artist, Butler actually succeeded in that. He also succeeded in being a successful sheep farmer in the Upper Rangitata, which must have been an extremely difficult environment in which to operate. Butler's great thesis, if you like, is it's not in that title, What is Revelation? This is a kind of where he eventually gets to over the next 30 years of writing. But he believes that essentially Darwin's theory of natural selection was not the chief mechanism of evolution. The French scientist Lamarck had a better explanation, and Butler also argued very strongly that Charles Darwin had stolen the evolutionary concepts from his grandfather Erasmus. And he wrote about this in all of these books, in a series of papers. And once again, the scientific establishment rapidly turned against this young upstart who had made his fortune in New Zealand. How could he possibly foot it, if you like, with Darwin? And the accusations that Butler levelled at Darwin having stolen the ideas, etc., really rankled with Darwin's supporters. And Butler found himself on the outside of the scientific establishment, just
like everybody will.
like Velikovsky.
Anyway, there's no reason to go too much further with this. What happened to the guy was he was crushed for coming up with ideas, just like Velikovsky, just like me. However, at this point in time, there is really no way they can deny the DNA and the CAT scans and the specimens and the chemistry and the anatomists. This is turning to a very, very sad chapter in academia when they refuse. I mean, not just, oh, well, no, we refuse to look at it because we know we cannot stand in front of it and deny it. The only way they can deny it is to hide and run and not respond whatsoever. I have leveled the challenge and I said, silence is not an option. Absolutely not. With the evidence that I have, silence is no longer an option. They either have to say, yes, that's right, or no, that's wrong. And if they say, yes, it's right, we got a lot of thinking to do. And I can tell you right now, it's going to be, yes, it's right, if it's put in front of an audience. You can't stop it. There's no way you can deny it. Absolutely zero. None in the, no 5-year-old is so incompetent as to be able to dismiss this evidence. Maybe 6. Tops. All right, so, you know, you decide what you want to call it. Fraud, lies. It's not just incompetence. You know, at first I thought that's what it was, but now I know there's no question it's not just incompetence. And if it was, just imagine, oh my God. So that's what we're up against, is a denial of reality. And again, I'm sending this stuff to NASA, to Yale, to Harvard, to all of them. They've all had it. They've all got it. They all know about this, or they just don't care about it. And all of that, every one of these denials of either ignoring, don't care, or so incompetent as to just be able to dismiss everything, or so arrogant, actually. So, time for change. You people have to stand up for me. You have to stand up. And, you know, I know people are going to say, oh, you guy's crazy, but you have to stand up. Because I have stood up, and I can only stand so tall, and I'm about as high up as I'm ever going to get. I keep getting a little shorter every day, I think. You know, they just won't respond because I have them against the wall, and there's nothing they can do about it. We have new species, and not just one type of new species, we have multiples. This is no-toes. We call them no-toes because the toes are embedded inside. They don't have tendons, they have springs, and these are torsion springs. And I have, well, let me show you one more and then I'll let you go. All right, there's like a village. Tish Egerton has these, and they're all over the place. She's got a ton of them. She found these in 15 minutes after watching one of my videos. Because I challenged everybody. I said, go out and see if you can find these. In 15 minutes, she found no toes. These are mine here. Let's see, where's the one? These are some big ones that are around. These are giant ones from Giants. All right, and this shows it really well. All right, this is the style, and this is where the fibia goes down on the side. Same thing here. That's where the fibia goes. Now, you see that ball right there, and that strap running up, and see that saddle? That's this ball, and it's that strap, and it's that saddle where the bone sits. All right, now that's right, but what's not right, or what's different, is this. All right, that's spring-loaded. This one can twist, and it'll reach a certain point, and then it'll start to make this one twist. So it'll go, and then it'll come back down. But these are, and I looked at this over, there's little springs, and there's little holes in here, and little, it's a constructed foot. And I have other ones too. I mean, we got so much stuff that to dismiss this and not want to be involved and not contact me back after me reaching out over and over and over, I don't know what to say. I don't know how can you defend teachers in academia and Yale and Harvard and all of these places? Who can defend them? Who can defend them? I can't.